Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
You and I are kind of similar. You may even be more good-hearted than me. I feel like you. Well,
but in our longing hearts, we're all the same.
Mutual respect and
yes.
A boundary might have been crossed that you, right?
That's
so
right.
just an example it is a great example. I appreciate that for giving me the example to even work with.
Let's be the change we want to see.
I've never seen differences negative. I've always been attracted to and intrigued by it. But we're looking for how are we similar? How are we the same? How can we all just get along?
We are links in a chain. Unimportant.
Hey.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, welcome to Working It Out Across Generations. If it's your first time joining us, we are happy to have you. If it is not, we are happy to have you. We are the show that talks about all things conflict, and we come up with some tips, strategies, ideas for how you might want to resolve some of the conflicts that are happening. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Lynn.
And I'm your other host, Justin. And today we have a really, really cool topic. I think it's a topic that has been talked about and debated and argued over and just, been definitely on a lot of people's minds for a long time. But before I get into that, I just want to, put something out there, send some good energy to my co-host, Dr. Lynn. It's a pretty tough day for us over here in our household as it is. Remind me how many years it's been?
It's actually 31 years.
31 years since my mom has lost her mom, so my grandmother on her side. And so, definitely just feeling the emotions and the spirit of her today. So I just wanted to put it out there that, we are thinking of and holding Dr. Lynn as well as her mother, in this time, even though, people say grief, get over it at some time and all that stuff, right? You might feel like that on some days, and there's some days where it feels like yesterday, regardless of how much time has passed on. So I just wanted to make sure I say that to you before we get into today's episode. Now, because this is...
You're really itching to get in here.
No, it's just an interesting one. I think it's an interesting one. Today we're going to be talking about talent versus mediocrity. And I think that this is very telling for our show, considering that we talk about generational perspectives on, just everyday conversations, conflicts, and so forth. And I think that, talent versus mediocrity has been something that has gone on and been talked about for a long time. As far as my general thoughts on this topic, I think it's really interesting having this conversation with people who I feel like haven't defined for themselves what both mean to them. So what does talent mean to you? What does that look like as far as, you know, the product that you're giving, but also the process to, you know, creating such a potent thing that people would want to be on the receiving end of, and then what does it mean to you when people are mediocre or showing mediocrity in a certain field, position, whatever that is. I think that those are just two things that we honestly have to spend a little more time like defining for ourselves. Also, when it comes to, you know, different areas of life, I think I hear this all the time when it comes to, you know, the entertainment industry, right? That's definitely like the biggest entry point, I feel like, in my experience, to this conversation, right? People have said, you know, oh, it's also kind of getting into my generational perspective a little bit, but like, oh, you know, these kids nowadays don't even try to make music. They're not even trying. And this is a whole bunch of noise and sounds and whatever, and people like it, and that's fine. But back in my day, you know, we really would, you know, bring together every instrument,
real music,
real curation of music and what that means, right? And so I just think it's very, very interesting as far as, you know, the topic also of evolution, right? Like how we grow and you know, of where we're going and of where we're headed, you know, what do we want to stick and then what do we want to let go of? And so, and then what if we adopted on the way that could either support that we're moving into a more talented time period, or we're moving into a more mediocre time period, right? I think part of the evolution conversation is, you know, we're trying to get to a place where we can do all of these harder or everyday things quicker, right? That's like the main thing that I've been seeing as far as the reasons for such advancements and so fast. And at what cost does that come with? And so I think it's just really, really interesting. And I have this conversation quite a lot.
Do you?
All the time. I mean, it's like I don't even try to, like I'm not even looking to, but I mean, it also, it just comes out even in, you know, comments from young people. It's not just like, you know, older people or whatever who are like, you know, miserable in this new age of, you know, talent or mediocrity, right? It's like, you know, we talk about it as young people ourselves too, of, you know, as far as like the process into how we make the things that we're into, you know, how much time are we putting into it? How much love are we putting into it? How much of all these different things that I think are factors in this conversation in terms of distincting between the two. So it's really interesting.
Well,
really interesting.
I love that. I didn't know that you all were talking about it, but I think it's great. I think you should be.
We are talking.
You should be definitely talking about it. But we can also take it on a deeper level too, right? Because right now in the United States, there's this whole meritocracy conversation and making sure people get things on by their merit alone, not by other factors. And it's clear that when people say that, they don't understand the systems that operate within this country, because it goes deeper than that as to who has always held certain positions. I love that y'all think that everybody that's held them has done that because they merited that, they earned it, and not because y'all just know each other and y'all keep referring to each other and have all of this old boy network and on and on and on. But hey, stay with your fantasy, okay? It's cool. But the truth is,
stay with your fantasy. Jeez, yeah, that's more of a me comment. All right. Nice. Nice.
But I mean, the truth is that there has always, in my view, there's always been people who were not talented and qualified for the job. But I do think that standards are different depending on the industry. And also, I think that people are really waking up to the fact that there are folks that just don't necessarily cut it. But again, too, people have their own definitions, right, of what talent is and what isn't talent. Listen, let me say this. When your dad can teach you how to play tennis and you become superstars and you learn from a book and from being out there, cold, wind, sleet, snow, whatever. Maybe it wasn't snow because they were in California, but in any case, or Southern California, and you can become Venus and Serena Williams. That's an example of talent and hard work, but definitely talent, right? So that's a high bar, and everybody's not going to come up to such a high bar in each industry. However, I know all of us can name low bars, according to us, of course, and we can name differences. So it's interesting you brought up the music industry, right? And yes, it is true. Music, I've said it myself, like this is when music was music. However, I will say this. When they decided to take money out of music programs, art programs, etc., right? The hip hop generation didn't let that stop them, and they created their own style and their own music and their own genre that didn't go away. Because I know people who was like, "Oh, I can't wait till this fad." I'm like, "Fad? This is not going away." I knew that. I knew that that was not going to happen. So, but even within, right, that industry, people have noticed a change. I've been reading and hearing and watching videos of people who really have had their own opinions about what is it now, right? Same thing in every industry, corporations, businesses, people like parenting, these kids, right? There's the whole mediocre parenting kind of thing, conversation that's happening too. And so
And I'm glad it's happening.
Why are you glad it's happening?
I'll try to be nice and not say why I'm glad it's happening, but I'm glad it's happening. You mediocre parents out there know what I'm talking about because you are one of them. Let's just leave it at that.
And maybe they don't, because I think that's one of the things about it is that the mediocre folk tend to be the ones that think they're the most talented.
True. True. It's very, very,
right?
it's very, very interesting.
It is very interesting. And then what's the talent bar? So things like that I've heard, like influencers, like you really don't have to be talented.
Right.
I just ran across, I was watching a documentary. Oh, I know. It was Black comedy, The Dark Side of the 90s. And they were doing a piece on Arsenio Hall when he had his show. Or maybe, I'm sorry, I might be mixing up stuff. But in any case, I saw a show where a talk show host, it wasn't Arsenio, was interviewing. Oh, I know, it was Barbara Walters, y'all. That documentary is pretty interesting. But anyway, Barbara Walters.
Arsenio Hall.
I know.
From
I watched a lot
Walters.
of things. I watched a lot of things. Talk show hosts, they both had that in common. Okay. And she had specials, primetime specials. But anyway, sorry.
Wow.
I know. They get confused a lot. But anyway,
They don't. I know they don't. No, they don't. I guarantee you these people don't get.
They both had talent. They both changed the game.
Jesus. Okay.
They both changed the game.
Talk.
So
Okay,
I was
talk
watching Game Changers, right? Anyway, thank you. Barbara Walters was interviewing the Kardashians in like the first year of their show. She went into this whole place. I mean, like, I'm confused. You don't have talents. You don't have any gifts. You don't, like, she named all the don'ts. And yet, huge success. And we can talk all night long about why. A lot of factors. But again, somebody was questioning, right? And the Kardashians, what are they, like 25 years now, their show or something like that? It's been on a long
10.
time.
Yeah, at least 10.
It's been on a long time. Maybe it's 10. I don't know, but because I don't watch it. But in any case, a long time. So the conversation is still continuing because people are bringing it to influencers on social media today, and what is it that they actually do and contribute in terms of talent? And does that mean that there's a low bar? I mean, I think it's a really interesting conversation, and I'm hoping that you're having the conversations as well. So I think about these are the kinds of things that kind of fun to talk about too, actually, and we should be looking at what's, is it talent versus mediocrity?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you think of that interview, right, that you're referencing, like, do you think she was right? Do you think that they don't have talent? Like, because I feel like talent and gifts
are different.
And so I feel like they are, like, if we're talking Kardashian, which I like don't want to, but like if that's the reference I'm using, right? Like, you could say that they are like gifted marketers, or like their mom.
I was gonna say, Chris.
You could say the mom is a gifted marketer,
businesswoman in general,
right? She can sell anything, right, and to anyone. Absolutely, right. And then, right, like, I think talent. I'm like, what do they have? So, like,
well, it's interesting because
different. What is the difference?
I can go one better. While Barbara was running down the list, they were agreeing with her. Like, they were like, yeah, no talent, no. Right?
I remember her saying, I don't remember their response.
They were agreeing with her, but they knew they would sell. They knew that they would attract huge audience.
Yeah.
And they were not wrong. And that's not the only person that I saw. I saw Kim Kardashian before the show came on. She was promoting it, trying to get people to tune in for the premiere. And another talk show host, late night, I get them confused, so I can't tell you exactly who it was, laughed at her and said, why would anybody tune in to you and your family? Like, who cares? And boom, they know.
Here we go. Right.
They knew. So again, do you even have to have talent? Is it about marketing? And even if you go into the workplace space, right? It isn't.
Yeah.
There are some people who honestly know how to sell themselves, and they land the position, right? Or somebody else knows how to sell you, so you get the position.
That's what I'm seeing a lot of, or hearing a lot more about, and that's an interesting one, as far as, who gets the opportunities, right? As far as like who gets, is it about looking the part or actually being the part, right? And I think we just get misconstrued in really what people are able to contribute to certain things that they're going for, right? Like, it's just about what you can contribute at the end of the day. And so, I see a lot of that. I've seen a lot of that growing up, as far as, especially in the workforce, like, I've already got, like, for college, it's like, I already got my job lined up. I know you're looking for something similar. We want to live together in after college, right? We can get a place. So let me just put a word in, get you in, see what you can do, right? And I know people who have lied on resumes and all. That's like a regular thing. I think for a long time that's been a thing, and just so many different things, right? And I think for me, it just, as far as my generation, again, we hear this conversation a lot with music, right? Like, who's really cares about what they're putting out there, who really, studies the game in a way and studies the history as far as, what we've come from to transition to where we are now. There's a certain level of attentiveness, I think, that we focus on to distinct two, and care, ultimate care for, really just something bigger than you, or how your talents or your efforts can affect just you. And so it's really, really interesting, because we're also a very selfish generation, my generation, right? Like, that's where influencing is. I think that's like what influencing is. It's a pretty selfish thing, in the sense of, like, you're not like as an influencer, like probably you're not like serving your 500,000 followers or like whatever, right? You're putting out stuff that, you're putting out, kind of energy that has been poured into you, right? So think about like promos, right? Like when people are promoting products, that's because that company or whatever thinks that they are of value. So it's like, again, I'm just saying that to say like the selfish piece of it is I don't think that we focus a whole lot on, like how other people are going to receive possibly our contributions to society. And we just kind of let it be up to, honestly, like in an art way, like the interpretation of other people to land on what they want to land on for it. And
yeah, well, some people are chasing the dollars, but some people are just chasing the dollars and others are not.
I think, yeah, like that's the thing. And I think that because we've shifted so much into this, just this money mindset, right? We've been in that place as a people, right? We've always been a driver of money and the dollars and that being our gateway to some sort of like freedom or liberation of some sorts, right? But I think that when you go that route, you'll see so many things that aren't genuine, that are like very, very much recycled in a way, right? There's not really much thought into new ways of going about these things because it's like, oh, well, why fix something that isn't broken, right? And I think that as far as, putting your 10,000 hours into something, right? Like, going to the other side of that, seeing it through to the other side of that is a really, really cool thing that I think ultimately will be valued in the end over your digital footprint that could look like you put the 10,000 hours in on something. Well, so it's really, really interesting.
I think this conversation can also go to the piece around, right? So talent versus mediocrity. So one of the things that I know still continues to be a point of contention is these like TikTok dances, and they're often creators who look like you or me, right? And then they are imitated. And so is that mediocrity that we accept that, hey, this person now is doing this and they blow up and bigger and they don't give credit to who originated it, who had a lot of great talent, because if they didn't have the great talent, you wouldn't have imitated it in the first place and then took it for yours to make it blow up because you knew that you could make it blow up. I think it's just there's a lot of this going on. And if I'm thinking about in my generation, definitely goes back to the more systemic stuff, because who we had to put up with that was known as talent was, I'm gonna call it out, they'd long dead anyway. Carol Channing, what kind of talent that woman had? Oh, Jimmy Durante. These people were talentless, but they were exalted, right? As people who had talent. And I grew up in a household where, my mom didn't play anything that didn't have talent. And even some of the records, yes, I'm dating myself, records that I played, right? I knew that if I was going to ask my mom to listen to something, they had to be talented. I had to introduce her to people she did not know, right? And
you're the same way. You're more open, but you're probably more the same way. I couldn't bring BS to your ear as far as, music that I was listening to. So I think that's,
because you even bring me some songs, rap songs, and you'll say, Mom, because you got to hear this, right?
Specifically artists that she doesn't like.
Right.
I'll do that.
And
I gotta respect at least this piece of it that they have really, trademarked for themselves as part of their style. And I feel like I've gotten you to the point where you're like, okay, I can see the talent in that, like I could see the effort the
Oh, I'll say
attentiveness.
that's a bar because you
Yeah,
always
yeah,
say
yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
and I mean it. I'm not trying to
No,
be cool,
no, at all.
right? I get what you taught
means
me,
it, yeah.
right? And I've listened, and I'm like, oh wow, that's a bar. Or even if I'm not listening to a rap song, somebody's speaking, right?
Mhm.
And right, I'm like, wow, that's a bar. and I do recognize the talent that goes into it. I mean, things like stand up. I did stand up for a little while, and I bow down to people who are really committed and make it in stand up, because I'm going to tell you, it is a tremendous amount of work just to write even a 5-minute piece. So I will look and I will see. I think that there is, and probably always has been, this whole mediocrity in stand up as to who gets, as to who gets to be these big stars. Again, the systemic stuff. Again, the systemic stuff.
Please get into it. I was going to ask you about that on this episode.
And I mean, look, I can't remember which Chris Rock episode of stand-up comedy it was, but he even said it, right? Somebody that he's friends with that is a white comic who he's like, if I was as talented as him, I'd be unemployed. Like, there's just
Jesus Christ.
Like, we gotta be.
Shout out Chris. I ran into him on the street of New York, in New York City, probably like last year. So cool guy.
Yeah,
cool
y'all look at it.
But damn,
y'all recognize the name of the comedian he was saying, because I sure agreed with him. And it's but it really is. It is something. And again, people can like who they like. That's not what we're talking about, though. I mean, and I guess it can be very subjective as to what you consider talent and what you don't. But I also, I think perhaps in the arts, it's much more subjective. But when you're talking about being in a workplace and you are seeing people getting the promotions that you know are not good at what they do, right? If you honestly are looking, you're not looking with this lens that says, oh, they just got it because they just got it because they're, you know, whatever requirement, whether it's skin color or whatever, right? No, if you're not looking with that lens, because we can do a whole show on that piece, because come on, man, y'all really don't understand the history of this country. But in any case, if you really have the lens that says, wow, that person, I'm not sure why I'm starting to understand who they knew, who they know, right? Who's their angel, who's their godfather or godmother. I think that's a phrase that's often used, right? Because they're really not qualified. They're really not good at this. They don't have any kind of gift for people, right? For working with people. That's another thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know how many leaders in companies or in schools actually are not good around people, like really not, or like conflict. You know how many leaders are making big time decisions for so many people out there, and people who live very differently than they do. Yeah. And yet they're some of the most conflict averse people you'll ever meet in your life. Right. And you're dealing with conflict on it every day, you know? So it's like,
and they think how did you get it?
Right. And so it's like, how did you get there? How did, like, what do we really value at the end of the day? And I think just putting that out for my generation, that's the only thing I'll really say about it, right? Was I think we've started to shift towards, you know, who can get me the answer that I'm looking for quicker and in the quickest fashion. Whereas, honestly, you know, your generation and any before me, they valued time and hours put in towards, right? You know, you'll hear so many times, like, you know, you'll know I've heard something. I'm probably gonna, you know, butcher the phrase, you know, bar for bar, but it's like, you'll know you're working hard or something like that when you're not looking at the clock anymore. You know what I mean? So like stuff like that. And I feel like you guys valued you know, and pride yourselves on that, whereas us, at least in the masses, or what we think is the masses, because social media is not, there's still a world and people out there who don't even use social media and like all these things, right? But we value, in a way, because we're seeing quick results all the time, and seeing people with the certain amount of followers and whatever that you can also buy, right? I want to put out there, you've been able to buy followers or buy views or whatever. So don't be fooled out there.
How many times you look and go, oh, they have 3 million, like,
right. And I'm not, again, not trying to hate, not trying to whatever.
Nope,
it really is a, like, I think it just becomes a conversation where we have to ask ourselves just some deeper questions as to, what does this mean to you? What does that mean to you? What does time spent on something and possibly not getting what you're looking for in the time frame that you want? How would you feel if that happened, right? How much do you care about your industry? Would you do your job for free? Like, I think these are just valuable questions that will honestly separate and indicate, where people are as far as effort, to be quite frank, like really, really effort. Because you can put effort into mediocrity too. Like you can put, you know what I mean? Like you could go to ChatGPT every time you have a paper, right? And just put in better instructions over time.
These days you have to put in effort. Right. I mean, coming up, I see people who don't put in effort. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
And that's why they're mediocre.
Absolutely. And I think that's what it looks like today as far as mediocrity. Like you could put effort into over time, just asking for better results out of the software, and getting a better product, and never putting your knowledge and your voice, your
skills, right,
all of those
into
things.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just it's a really, really interesting thing as far as, with all of that said, who do we deem as, right for the job or fit for this opportunity?
Yeah,
and that's really, these are valuable questions.
Who has real talent?
These are valuable
questions. And then people are so competitive these days, they're willing to trash people who do have actual talent.
Correct. Because it's like,
see that a lot too.
Yeah, my generation's weird. I don't know what it is with us and like trying stuff, but we somehow, some way, and sometimes think that, the kids that try or try too hard, right, are like weird in a way, or like whatever, right? And it's just to point that out in a sense of just how different the mindset shift has been. We once valued, as I said, putting 10,000 hours into something and seeing it through. And now we're kind of just like, how do I keep that clock moving, if not even faster, even potentially when I'm not putting time in on that particular thing, right? And so, we're very much into like passive income and stuff like that. And
nothing wrong with passive
nothing
income.
Wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I'm saying though, like that's, the more passive, like
the less you got into, the less you have to learn, the less
just the more passive you become, because passive is a part of the actual freaking, I can't use the word I want to, it's part of the freaking equation of what we just said, right? Yeah. And so it's a really, really interesting thing. And shout out to all the people who have built a life for themselves off of mediocrity, I guess, or like not trying that hard. But there you go, touching stuff.
I'm good. I'm back to where we should be.
All right, cool. Just leave it alone now. So it's interesting. I think it's really, really interesting. And again, this is something that's been talked about for years. And if anything, I think we got to bring it back to the foundations of asking ourselves some of those just basic questions. What does this mean? What does that mean? Could that definition change for you over time, so forth? And, moving with some grace, as well as, integrity in that as well. It's okay to, in certain areas, I guess, not work as hard, not feel like you're working as hard, right? But when you're doing the things that you love and that you really care about, and you really, have no problem putting the time in for, it doesn't feel like work. So I think that's something that, I've learned from all the people who came before me, and I think that still sticks to today, 100%.
So now, if you're arguing about this, though, because conversation is one thing, and that's what you're talking about, but arguments, if you're arguing about this, then you may want to think about some of the things that we are going to share with you right now. 5 things to consider if you are arguing about this.
Cool. First thing, personal definitions for both. What does talent mean to you? What does it mean to be talented, right? What does it mean to be mediocre or to show mediocrity? And I think, as I just said, it's really just important to have those foundations set for yourself before you go asking others to think about it, or before you go pressing other people about it, right? If you feel like, let's say there's someone who, is in a position in your company that you really want, or that you were up for grabs for too, and they ended up going a different route. If you're gonna go up to that person and all that stuff, right? At least just make sure you are clear on what these 2 words mean to you, so that you can effectively communicate whatever it is that you want to say. Of course, that's like a out of left field reference or idea. I hope people aren't going out there and just saying like, you don't deserve the job because you're mediocre and you're talentless. We're not, what's her name? Barbara Walters. We're not Barbara Walters. We want to be more Arsenio, right? Since that's the comparison we're talking about.
No, I'm not comparing them.
But are the ones we're mistaking Barbara Walters and Arsenio Hall? I'm gonna sleep on that tonight. That was actually hilarious. But definitely just at least set those things and those foundations for yourself before you go asking other people to think about it.
Yeah, because I think we all think we got the same definition of most words
And
anyway. But most definitely, we have to really think about, how do we define talent and how do we define mediocrity when we're having this if we really want to have a conversation, because then you can start to measure things. Right. Oh, so your definition. So by that definition, I think maybe I can see what you're talking about when you're talking about this person or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next is try to see things from the other person's point of view. And I think that this is something that a lot of us have trouble with, because of course, we have our own lens. We see things the way we see things. And these days, we're really stubborn at staying there and not wanting to even try to see it at all. But it's a really important thing, because it starts, I think it can start with the definition. So then you're trying to say, okay, so let me just see if I can see it from your lens, right? From your point of view. We try to do it here generationally. So yeah, I guess I could understand why your generation would see it that way because of X, Y, and Z, right? Because of things you've been exposed to. Well, in our case, because of the things we didn't have. And to be able to think about, okay, so maybe I can get to the place of understanding why they think this person is talented or mediocre.
Yeah, I think that it just alleviates some of that charge and some of that anxiety or whatever that comes from having these conversations or getting into these kinds of arguments. Because we already come to these things and come to these engagements with things we're already thinking, things we're already feeling, and the want to share those things in the most purest of forms, right? Which at times is cool and I think serves the purpose. And then I think this is something that always serves the purpose, as it will help you to come back to your own feelings and whatever in just a more level-headed way, which will only effectively increase your ability just to communicate those things in a better way, right? And so we're very much people who don't want to have just like one conversation where we just get everything out. But like, we like keeping the door open. Yeah. So I think that even the most heated of times, the most disagreeing of times, seeing from the other person's perspective always keeps the door open and just little by little gets rid of some of that charge when it comes to having that conversation. So, and
it allows you to walk away, like you said, it eliminates that charge and it allows you to walk away feeling good with each other, not feeling like you really want to hurt each other.
Mm-hmm. Next, no harsh judgments, right? Shout out Barbara Walters, right? But that was, I can't get that out of my head. But even then, that like that was harsh, like in the sense of, she didn't follow it up by saying, you know, but Chris, you're a master marketer.
Well, I didn't see the whole interview. She might have said that
doubt
at some
this
point.
woman said that. She, from what I remember,
but she was known for just putting stuff right out
just
there.
Harsh, bro. Harsh. Very like just end all be all kinds of comments. And I think that we want to stay away from those because it also goes into our next one, right? But it doesn't leave room for people to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Or you know, you're honestly stunting their view on their potential for growth, even just by putting it out there in that way. I'm a firm believer that you can say almost anything you want if you find a way to say it and if you're in the right audience and all these different things. And so even if you do have judgments, right, I just think there's a better way. There's always a better way to go about expressing them. And, you know, really, again, we're firm on in those moments, right, in the heat of it all, like returning to ourselves, right, like returning to our game plan that we came in with and that we hope to leave with as well. And so for sure, you want to just, especially when you see it start to get heated or whatever, check in with yourself and saying, okay, am I starting to shift from like feedback into judgment, or is it going from judgment into just, you know, let me rip this person apart however I can?
And we've all been there.
And we've all been there. We've all done it. We've also all overlooked the value in checking in with ourselves in that moment.
Right.
We've all overlooked that at times too. So I think that, you know, again, just bringing it back to the foundation, bringing it back to the game plan, will just help you continue to see it through in your most level-headed space. You know, we want to be level-headed as much as possible in these very heightened kinds of engagements that we can get into.
Yeah,
and we are getting into heated and heightened engagements on a daily basis and have been for quite some time now. So it's really about, you know, how do we see the cool and take pride in the foundations.
Right, because if you gotta threaten somebody because of their opinion, then you really aren't going to be able to talk about anything, right? So yeah, no harsh judgments. There are people who are very direct, right? And they say what they say, but every conversation can't hold that. So you want to, because it's hard not to judge. We do it up here, even if it doesn't come out of our mouth. So we have to, as you said, check in with ourselves and really pay attention, because there's a whole lot of name calling going on. Well, that's a stupid thing to say. Oh, that's a stupid opinion. Or you have no clue what talent is. But all of
very closed opinions. Yeah.
Right. And we have to, if we really want to have conversations and understand what people see in other people and what are the things that may be missing from our view, right, then we don't want to say harsh judgments about people and their opinions.
Absolutely.
And then, as you said, you got to be open to growth. If you're going into every conversation around this, choosing to never be wrong or never to be able to see something new, something different, something interesting, something that peels away a lens that you had, something that gives you insight into what the other person or people are thinking, then what are you in it for? Every conversation has the potential for us to grow from it if we are open to that, including this one. I mean, you may try a new artist because of the conversation that you had. You may go back and look at someone differently because of the conversation that you had, but you have to be open to that rather than standing on, as what's the saying, if you're willing to die on that hill, like that's, you don't care. Be open to growth.
Yeah, I agree. I'm all for this. I really just think we're too complex and too layered as not only individuals but also as a society to possibly have at least the amount of like closed off opinions that we could have about one another. So I just think it doesn't serve you like to be closed off in your thinking, in your communication, right? staying open is just the best thing that you could possibly do. And then, from there, set boundaries, set, whatever, but always be open to even that those things could change. Right. So that's my thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say one more thing on this. So we go back to the Barbara Walters thing. These were clips, so this wasn't the actual whole interview. And in reality, Barbara intrigued me enough. Not just Barbara, but the fact that one of them was saying right along with her, right? We have no talent. We have no right. Open to, wow, I want to hear more. I'm really interested in what it is that they're going to share with her that can possibly shed light and maybe even change some of her point of view about them.
Man, she's whack. But even then, I probably have my own research to do because she probably got talent out there as well. So it's a mixed bag for me when it comes to any of those people on that show. So next up, right?
And then the last thing is operate with integrity. Yeah, I think that is important. I got into a lot of different disagreements around this person, that who has talent, who has a voice, who does, who really can get out there and do blah, 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 all of those things. And I've had to think about those things, and I've not wanted to pull out like the age card, right? The generation. Well, I'm older. I've been through. I've seen. I know what. To me, that's not operating with integrity. My integrity says to me that I got to give everyone a chance to hear what it is, and also that just because I have the years on folks doesn't mean that they don't know something that I maybe don't know, or that they're not entitled to their point of view on this particular person or subject. And I think you have to not go into this with the idea that you're just going to tear a generation down. Because we do a lot of that too. These youngins, these millennials, these operate with the integrity of they have a life that you don't have, right? That's been very different. And therefore, they have a point of view and perspective that you most definitely can learn from, and there's no need to tear it down.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And I think that's cool. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see difference of thought, difference of whatever as a threat always or whatever. And I think my generation at times definitely can take it there as far as, like, if they think of something that you didn't and somehow their idea gets ran with in that moment, it's like, somehow that person is a threat or whatever to your own intellect and your own whatever. And I just think, it's one of those things where, if you remember who you are, you remember, like I said, the time you put in, you remember all those things, you can stand on that and you can stand firm in it and you can feel confident in that. Then that's really the thing that's going to take you far. You know what I mean? Your ability to not only be resilient in not getting what you want, but also to still come back to the table and still offer what you have to offer, which is good stuff, is potent stuff, it's helpful. That's really, like, I think something that a lot of people struggle with. I'm not going to say people can't do, but I know it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And so that's just such a modeling thing that is bigger than I think people even know. That we need more models for, you know what I mean? That's such a walking the walk rather than wanting to look the part kind of thing. And so, and we pride ourselves on that. We don't want to look tough, we want to be tough. And so, operate integrity. Feel confident in yourself.
There you go. So, final thoughts on this. I love the topic. I love to hear who people think are talented and who are not. And
yeah, I would love to hear that too. I really would love to hear that too. And across, industries and whatever, right? So if it's a celebrity, if it's someone you work with, you don't want to name drop, right? Because we want everyone to keep the jobs here, right?
Right.
Whatever it's someone you've seen growing up, someone you idolize who maybe you don't idolize as much now. for whatever reason, please, we'd absolutely love to hear more about what you guys think on this topic. And yeah, I love this conversation. I really, really do.
I can tell.
And I think I love it because I'm someone who's, who has both in them, just like anyone else, right? There's certain areas that, I work very, very hard in, and there's some areas where I'm just like, I wish I could just get the quicker way to the finish line, right? And I don't think either's bad. I think that if anything, we got to start thinking about just what does that mean for us collectively. That's it. How the individual consensus leads to our collective either policies or just like ways of being.
Yeah, and how we work together and collaborate more.
True.
If you can appreciate somebody else's talent, then you will see. I love that in the music industry that we're seeing more and more of that people in different genres.
Oh, the collaborating is crazy. And outside of just mashups, and those are that's not easy too.
That's
you know what
right.
I mean? Like you need a real ear to know that this song on this cadence can fit into the, so that's its whole thing. But I love that you brought that up. The collaboration is insane. There's artists that are going into genres that you wouldn't even think
that's right
you would hear on an instrumental of such, let alone work next to an artist of that genre, caliber, whatever it is. And it's just really, really cool to watch when you see that, people really care about what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Well, I am thrilled that we had this chance. I love listening and learning from you, with you, and we're just thankful that you all tuned in today. So
absolutely. If you want to see more of Working It Out Across Generations, check us out on e360tv.com, Trajectory Channel, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. I swear we have more subscriptions and stuff. We just have to get them on here. So we'll definitely shoot out some information to you guys soon on that. Check us out on Facebook at Working It Out TV Show. You can also check us out on YouTube at Working It Out Across Generations. And if you'd like to send in any love, questions, show topics, who you think is talented or mediocre, right? All those things. Who do you think the tougher generation is? Anything you want to say to us, please reach out to Working It Out Across the Generations at e360tvlive.com. Guys, you know what we say here. Small is all. We are truly building to something bigger than us. So every like, every follow, every subscription, every share, every comment, every piece of engagement truly means the world to us. We really do live in a world where so much is happening all the time. And if you think that's bad, then I guarantee you the conversations around these things are even worse or even more unhealthy. And we just want to help reverse that a little bit, one conversation at a time, get people feeling a little more confident to come together in this world that, we should be coming together and feeling good and prideful in the areas in which we are not only the same, but also different.
Very different.
And that's
okay.
Okay.
Be able to disagree.
Absolutely, right? So we just want to help, encourage the world to have difficult conversations a little bit easier, one conversation at a time. This was really, really great. I thought it was a really great episode.
I enjoyed it.
I had a lot of fun, but we got to head out. So I'm Justin.
And I'm Dr. Lynn.
You know what we say? Conflict is here to teach you something about yourselves. So go out there and find out what that is. And we'll see you next week.
Yes, indeed.